for a disappointment. The others are locked in museums and private collections. I don't think there will be another one available for the next 200 years, said Moore. And it only ran on Union oil. The city of Hartford, Michigan, had a police car that shared a trait with many humans. It didn't like to work on Sundays and Saturdays. The car was a 1982 Plymouth, and before it was more than a few months old, it had already been to the repair shop 8 times to be treated for weekend loss. You can't be driving down the road and the engine stop running without any warning, said a city official. The oddest thing is that it only happens on the weekends. I guess it doesn't like to work overtime. He wasn't doing too well. Once upon a time, a man known simply as Dr. Bischoff lived in Kiel, Germany. Daily he gazed upon the waters of the Baltic. Out of such gazing came the inspiration to invent a ship, not an ocean liner, of which there were plenty, but a desert liner. By 1927, plans for the ship of the desert were completed. It would be 4 stories high, 60 yards long, the way 350 tons, driven by a 200 horsepower ship's engine. It would plow the billowy wastes of the Sahara on wheels 15 yards in diameter to get to the monstrous dune buggy off the drawing board and onto the sand. Bischoff formed a company and set about raising money. 3 models were offered: a passenger ship, a freighter, and a ship of war, in varying degrees of luxury. All 3 models would have such comforts as baths, ventilators, and dining and sleeping quarters. Bischoff's sales pitch rocked the imagination, but raised no money. With doubt as its sole cargo, the ship of the desert sank quietly into the sands of time. Giant car snail. In 1910, the wind-powered automobile had a moment in the sun. The machine was a light frame supporting a saddle and a mast. The whole rested upon 4 wheels, a large wheel front and back, and a smaller wheel on either side. The wheels in the rear and on the right side were rigidly connected, as were the ones in front and on the left. The driver-sailor steered by pressing his feet on the widthwise axle. His hands remained free to work the sail or to brake. The wind model was expected to go over big with lovers of sport. Contests of speed, reported one newspaper with empty columns to fill, will involve but little of the dangers of cycle or automobile races. What counted most were the quickness and skill required in using the surrounding air conditions. A patent on the windmobile was taken out by a person who ranks among history's wrong-way thinkers. American newspaper described him merely as a German inventor. He is, wrote the New York reporter, a man who desired to become an airplane pilot but feared to fall. The car that never was. Craig Hinton, a car specialist for movie makers, insists that he once owned the 2 best Mercedes ever built. They were Jaguars. The producers of the film Raiders of the Lost Ark needed 1936 German staff cars, a Mercedes, they called Hilton. Hilton couldn't find the real thing, so in May 1980, he and his crew went to work in a garage near Coventry, England. In 12 weeks, they built a 1936 Mercedes body on a 1960 Jaguar chassis. A backup model took 2 weeks longer. Outwardly, the Jaguars were identical to the originals, down to the pleats and the upholstery. Inwardly, they were better. The 1936 Mercedes had a top speed of 70 miles per hour, powered by a newer Jaguar engines, and 2 look-alikes zipped along at 120 miles per hour. The filmmakers took the first car to Tunisia for a scene in which a mad Nazi and his men engaged in a spectacular desert chase. Hilton brought the engine car over 3 weeks later. From the moment he drove the Seed off the dock, he got attention. Wherever he went, he was greeted with the respect normally paid a chief of state. Men and women smiled and waved at the 1936 German staff car and its jet black paint and split windshield. Police came to attention as it sped by. Soldiers saluted. Hilton was flattered but puzzled. He knew the car was good, but how could people on the side of the road appreciate his craftsmanship at a glance? Eventually, he learned the reason for all the acclaim. There was another 1936 German staff car in Tunisia, an original one, and it belonged to the president of the country. Advance to the rear. A German scout car was captured by the Americans in southern Tunisia during World War II. It had 8 wheels, 2 drivers, and never had to turn around. It also had 2 front ends. One driver sat in the front and the other in the front. The car could speed forward in any direction at speeds faster than 50 miles per hour. The Americans painted a white star over the German cross and used the car for reconnaissance purposes. It proved battle-worthy, though no one inside it ever knew for certain if he was advancing or retreating. Beetle blooper. Before World War II, the Volkswagen factory in Germany was inspected by American and British experts. If they were asked if it was worth taking over as payment in part for war damages, Volkswagen's sole product was the Beetle, an automobile that was designed in 1938 as a people's car for German workers. The ugly little car was scoffed at. "This car is not worth a darn," said the head of the American group, Ernest Breech, president of the Ford Motor Company. The British experts held the same view. So the Germans kept the factory and produced the Beetle in many countries. By 1972, the little automobile had become the best-selling single-model car ever, with more than 15 billion sold around the world. Let the driver beware. Jean Perón, once the dictator of Argentina, Argentina, ran his country and his cars with equal cunning. As a gift to his wife, Eva, he ordered a 1952 Rolls-Royce. It was bulletproof, but only for the passengers. The driver's compartment was unarmored. Perron figured that a driver would refuse to take a bribe to steer the car into an ambush if he knew he was unprotected. Inside job. Lafitte opposing Benito Mussolini. The fastest premier of Italy from 1922 to 1943 appeared mysteriously in the streets of Italy's largest cities in 1930. The leaflets seemed to come from nowhere. Suddenly they were flying around in the midst of heavy traffic. Several cars had been fitted with propellers on the exhaust. The wind blew out the anti-Mussolini Lafitte's from the hidden chamber like bullets from a gun. Follow that never mind. Hits of the 1920 automobile saloon at the Commodore Hotel in New York City, where cars finished in colors that changed under different lighting. The cars on exhibition had custom-built bodies by American and European coachwork markers. Color changes in the chameleon cars included black to blue, blue to gray, tan to yellow, and back to the original colors. Color me safe. In the 1930s, U.S. automobile manufacturers had to be careful about the colors of cars they shipped overseas. Black could not be sold in India, where the color was considered unlucky. Red was forbidden in some countries, even as trim on bodies and wheels, because it stood for communism. No ordinary car in Japan could be maroon. The royal color maroon was reserved for the emperor's household cars. Neither could any cars but hearses be painted yellow, which signified mourning. Overkill. The Law Enforcement Assistance Administration decided to make the policeman's job easier in the mid-1970s by bringing the patrol car up to date. A Chevrolet was borrowed from the New Orleans Police Department and outfitted with nearly $2 million worth of electronic equipment, included in the souping up was a TV monitor, a multiple spark discharging system, tire sensors, a voice and digital terminal, and a microcomputer electronic system. The shortcoming was human. There was too much to watch inside the car. Besides, the policeman had to hook himself into the system. That made quick exits as easy as wriggling out of a straitjacket. Plans to equip 10 patrol cars and test them in police departments across the country were scrapped. The one-of-a-kind supercar was stripped down and returned to New Orleans. There it resumed life as an ordinary Chevrolet patrol car. Life in the slow lane. An English businessman gave up his Rolls-Royce to drive a mechanical shovel. Robin Goforth of Doncaster brought the yellow 5-ton construction vehicle for about $42,000. At an auction in 1985, he tried unsuccessfully to unload his 1972 Rolls Corniche convertible, worth about $35,000, at the same auction. He didn't bring a high enough bid. Goforth said he was afraid to drive the Rolls into town. It was too much of a temptation for thieves and vandals. The shovel will stand up to anything short of an earthquake, he said, and it's easier to steer than the Rolls. Absolutely no rust. The most valuable car ever built is yours, for free. If you can overlook the top speed of a little over 8 miles an hour, see what you're getting. A Super Bee custom-built, fully loaded cream puff that is out of this world, and like new Roadster that cost $2 million to manufacture and has been driven less than 30 miles. Standard goodies include 6 sets of hand tools worth $45,000 each, 12 motor-driven cameras worth around $40,000 each, and 6 complete TV cameras worth $90,000 each. Throw in all sorts of camping equipment and life support system. Would you believe the first lunar rover? It was left behind when the American astronauts returned to Earth from exploring and collecting rock samples. All you have to do is pick it up where it's parked on the moon. Chapter 2. Yes, all that was Chapter 1. What the heck? Chapter 2. Loose behind the wheel. Look where you've been! James B. Hargreaves and Charles Cretan saw America backward. They made a round trip from New York to California, driving in reverse all the way and without stopping their engine one time. The two men left New York City on July 26, 1930. The trip took 42 days. They arrived backed into New York City, shut off the engine, and posed for pictures on September 7th. There we go. The gears of the car were reworked so it could move in reverse only, and the headlights were attached to the rear. The only accident of the 7,180-mile journey occurred in the first mile. A taxicab dented a front fender and running board. After a short stay in New York City, Hargreaves, an interior decorator, and Cretan, a mechanic, drove home to St. Louis in Forward. Double take. It began as an ordinary shopping trip. Richard Baker took his wife in their 1987 American Motor Maroon Concorde to the Northgate Shopping Center in Sheboygan, Wisconsin, on April 1st, 1985. He came out before she did and put some groceries in the trunk. As he slid inside to drive from the parking space to pick her up, he discovered that his seat was mysteriously far back. The couple was returning from another errand when Mrs. Baker said, Something is wrong. Whose sunglasses are these? And look at all this stuff in here. This isn't our car." Baker got out and checked the license plate. They had the wrong car. The couple drove back to the shopping center. The police were waiting for them. 6 foot 4 inch Thomas J. Baker, no relation to Richard Baker, had reported the theft of his maroon 1978 Concorde. The police was talking like I was going to try to get away with the car, Richard Baker said. The officer changed his mind after trying the keys on both cars. Both keys unlocked and started both cars. Mystery solved. The odds are a minimum of 10,000 to 1 on just the keys fitting, declared Ben Dunn, an American Motor spokesman. When you add the factors of the color matching, the model, and the make being the same, the owners have the same last name, and both being in the same place on April Fool's Day, I can't even estimate the odds. If life hands you a lemon, why, make lemonade. Or as a fed-up owner did with this lemon of a car, beat it to a pulp. Ricky Johnson of Gloucester, England, was snowed under by repair bills on his 1978 Rover. When the car died on his way to work in 1982, he thought, enough! He pushed the car off the road, took a sledgehammer from the trunk, and bashed in the rear window. He felt better and better as he smashed all the windows and started on the body. After 20 minutes of pounding, the Rover was a shapeless mass of metal. "I'm real glad I did it," he said. "I got everything out of my system." 2 policemen in a patrol car stopped to investigate as Johnson was laying it on the Rover. They took no action. It was his property, a police spokesman. Besides, he had the car towed to the scrapyard when he was finished. He was quite responsible about the whole thing. Quite blubbering. Quit blubbering. Bella Petruccioli picked out a tiny spot's car to test drive and got struck so tight that firemen had to spend several hours cutting her loose. Patrocli, the 312-pound mother of 3, waddled into a Fiat showroom outside of Rome, Italy in 1985. "I looked up and there was this huge lady eyeballing the teeniest car into place," said Gino Romanazzi, a salesman. "I swear she was bigger than the car." Romanazzi tried to steer her to something more her size, but she wanted the little blue job. She waved a fistful of money. She said if he didn't let her take the car for a test drive, she'd buy a car somewhere else. The salesman threw up his hands and told her to and told her to shove herself in there if she could. Excuse me. I knew it was going to be a disaster, he said with a moan. Patroclus sucked in her belly, wiggled into the bucket seat, and exhaled. That's when she learned she was wedged fast. That fat lady was packed in there like 10 pounds of lard in a 5-pound can. A customer, Tony Burbelli, he skipped a half day of work to stay and watch the spectacle. Her front was draped over the steering wheel like a hen hunkered over an egg. You couldn't even see the wheel under all that blubber. Petroli started screaming that she couldn't breathe, and for someone to yank her out. Salesmen pushed and pulled and tried jiggling her free. She didn't budge. The sales manager had an idea. Grease her and just slide her out. He was overruled. Firemen were called. They had to chop apart the poor little sports car to rescue her. The Fiat dealer sued to recover the cost of the wrecked car. The beefy Petroli said she wouldn't pay. They shouldn't make cars women can't get in and out of, she declared. Freaking Karen. Taken to the cleaners. Lucia Ann Cram of London, England, drove a brand new car in the 1975 for about 15 seconds. Leaving the dealer's lot, she made a wrong turn down a one-way street and smashed through the display window of the dry cleaning shop. Those are the breaks. In Pomona, California, a 73-year-old woman passed her driving test in 1985. As she started to drive home, her foot slipped from the brake pedal and onto the accelerator. The car shot whiz-bang across the parking lot and through the wall of the Department of Motor Vehicles. By a miracle, no one was hurt. Only minutes later, a line of people waiting to take their driving test had stood along the wall, struck by the car. Less lucky was the woman in Harrisburg, Pennsylvania, in 1939. While completing the driver's test, she drove up 3 steps and crashed into the building where the licenses were issued. State Police J.P. Heckman stamped a single word over her application. Failed. And how? Some like 'em shot. After singing idol Elvis Presley died, his favorite automobile was put up for sale in California at 81. Before it ever reached the auction block, a couple of gentlemen with a suitcase stuffed with jewels struck a private deal. They got the car for the gems, $2 million worth. The price was more than anyone had ever paid for street wheels. The car and a 1971 Dito Maso